A woman from Phoenix walks into a German post office in Hamburg, confidently sliding a package across the counter. The clerk asks if she'd like to insure it. She stares, confused. Then asks why the German government doesn't automatically insure all mail like civilized countries do, and informed that insurance is optional. She launches into a theory about how this proves Germany never fully recovered from reunification, because divided countries can't coordinate basic services. She demands to speak with someone from West Germany's postal system specifically, insisting they'll understand her better. The clerk, exhausted, explains Germany reunified over 30 years ago. She nods knowingly and says, "Exactly, which is why your systems are still confused." She leaves without mailing the package, muttering about Cold War bureaucracy somehow still affecting stamp prices in Estonia. A man from Dallas tries entering a government building. The receptionist asks for his digital ID. He pulls out his physical passport, waving it dramatically. She explains Estonia uses digital identification for most services, offering to help him get a temporary digital credential. He refuses, launching into a speech about how papers built civilization, and digital systems are practiced for the social credit apocalypse. Claims his grandfather stormed Normandy so people could carry physical documents. When she mentions Estonia wasn't involved in DAT, he says, "Exactly my point, you don't understand freedom documentation." He spends 40 minutes trying to explain why blockchain is different from digital ID, using Facebook as his primary source. Security eventually escorts him out. He posts a 3,000-word blog about Estonian anti-paper discrimination. Most people watch these moments and laugh, but you're here connecting the dots. The psychology, the systems, the worldview mismatch. That's why subscribers get the advantage. This isn't content, it's clarity. You should have that on tap. These aren't isolated incidents. They're Tuesday. And if you're already noticing that this isn't about clueless tourists, but about entire worldviews colliding with reality, then you're exactly who this channel is built for. I track these cultural misfires full-time, so you don't have to. Subscribe, and you'll never see travel the same way again. A tourist from Houston arrives in Ljubljana, Slovenia, and heads straight to a pharmacy for allergy medication. The pharmacist asks if he's consulted a doctor. He looks offended, explaining that in America he can buy antihistamines anywhere, including gas stations. She nods sympathetically and explains that Slovenia requires pharmacist consultation for certain medications to prevent misuse and interactions. He interrupts, insisting this is a communist holdover policy designed to control the population. When she mentions Slovenia was never part of the Soviet Union, he dismisses this as revised history and claims he learned in school that all of Eastern Europe was Russia. She attempts to explain Yugoslav history. He cuts her off, demanding why a free country would restrict medication access. She offers to recommend an over-the-counter alternative. He refuses, saying he'll order from America and have it shipped. Then seems genuinely shocked when she explains customs might seize improperly imported medications. He leaves, convinced he's discovered evidence of a pharmaceutical conspiracy. Posting in travel forums about how Slovenian pharmacies are gatekeeping basic human rights, the pharmacist adds his interaction to her collection of stories that make her colleagues laugh during lunch breaks. In Copenhagen, a couple from Atlanta visits the famous Freetown Christiania, the semi-autonomous neighborhood known for its alternative lifestyle. They're enchanted by the colorful murals and unique architecture, until they notice residents openly selling cannabis. It stands marked Green Light District. The husband immediately approaches a police officer standing nearby, pointing frantically at the vendors, demanding arrests. The officer calmly explains that while cannabis is technically illegal in Denmark, Christiania operates under a complex tolerated arrangement that authorities generally don't interfere with. The American cannot process this information. He begins constructing an elaborate theory that Danish police are being bribed by international drug cartels, specifically mentioning Scandinavian neutrality in World War II as evidence of their history. Of looking the other way, his wife pulls. up news articles on her phone showing this has been Christiania's reality since the 1970s. He dismisses these as Danish propaganda and insists that real law enforcement means zero tolerance. He threatens to contact the American embassy to report Danish police corruption. The officer, maintaining impressive patience, suggests they might enjoy visiting the Little Mermaid statue instead. The man storms off, later writing a detailed Reddit post about how Denmark is basically Amsterdam but in denial, receiving hundreds of comments from Danes patiently, explaining their country's nuanced approach to drug policy. While he argues with every single one, a woman from Phoenix books an apartment in Vienna through a rental platform. On her first evening, her downstairs neighbor knocks, politely asking her to remove her shoes indoors, because the building has quiet hours and heels on hardwood creates significant noise. She refuses, explaining that shoe wearing is a constitutional right and removing shoes is unsanitary. The neighbor, a retired professor, gently explains that Austrian buildings, especially older ones, have specific noise ordinances and shared walls make consideration necessary. She interprets this as an attack on American freedom, claiming that if Austrians had won their independence through revolution like America did, they'd understand individual liberty. The professor, bemused, notes that Austria has a complex imperial history spanning centuries. She dismisses this, insisting that any country without a founding document exactly like the U.S. Constitution doesn't truly understand rights. She begins wearing tap shoes indoors specifically to assert her freedoms. Other neighbors file noise complaints. The building management explains she's violating her rental agreement's quiet enjoyment clause. She threatens legal action, citing American tenant rights law, seemingly unaware she's in Austria. She spends her entire vacation researching international human rights law, convinced she'll find proof that shoe wearing is protected. She leaves Vienna convinced the city is trapped in a medieval mindset about footwear. The building's residents collectively sigh in relief, and the story becomes legendary at neighborhood gatherings. In Porto, Portugal, a man from Texas enters a restaurant and immediately begins speaking slow, loud Spanish. The waiter responds in Portuguese. The American, frustrated, switches to even slower, louder Spanish, as if volume increases translation. The waiter politely explains that Portuguese, not Spanish, is Portugal's language. The man looks genuinely confused, pulls out his phone, and shows the waiter a map of the Spanish peninsula. The waiter, fighting a smile, explains it's called the Iberian Peninsula and includes two separate countries with distinct languages, histories, and cultures. The American seems personally offended by this information, insisting his high school geography teacher definitely said Spain covered this whole area. He begins theorizing that Portugal is actually a Spanish region trying to secede. Comparing it to Texas threatening to leave the U.S., the waiter brings him a history book from the restaurant's bookshelf, showing Portugal's independence in the 12th century. The man skims it, then declares it must be revisionist history funded by the Portuguese Tourism Board. He insists on ordering in Spanish for his entire meal. Becoming increasingly frustrated when staff respond in Portuguese, he leaves a review claiming the restaurant is pretending not to speak Spanish for some weird political reason. That waiter frames the review in the break room as a reminder that patience is indeed a virtue. A family from Michigan visits Tallinn, Estonia, specifically because they heard it's a cheap Eastern European city. They arrive expecting immediate warmth, minimal technology, and perhaps some charming poverty. Instead, they find a gleaming medieval old town surrounded by modern glass buildings, universal free Wi-Fi, and prices comparable to Western Europe. The mother approaches their hotel concierge, complaining that Tallinn is false advertising because it's not authentically Eastern European. The concierge, a woman who studied in London, asks what she expected. The mother describes something resembling a movie set from a Cold War thriller Bushkas. Empty shelves, visible desperation. The concierge explains that Estonia is one of Europe's most digitally advanced nations, the residency programs and a booming tech sector. The mother insists this is impossible because the Soviet Union only ended recently. When informed it ended 33 years ago, she does quick math, realizes that's longer than her marriage, and still maintains it's too soon for this level of development. Her husband pulls up his phone, Googling, "Is Estonia faking being advanced?" The concierge recommends they visit the Occupation Museum to better understand Estonian history. They go, then return confused about why Estonia doesn't seem grateful for Soviet infrastructure. The concierge stops trying to explain. The family leaves negative reviews across multiple platforms, warning travelers that Tallinn is not authentically post-communist enough. The concierge adds their comment card to her wall of fame. In Krakow, Poland, two college students from California take a food tour. The guide brings them to a traditional milk bar, explaining these cafeteria-style restaurants are remnants of communist-era subsidized dining, now preserved as cultural institutions serving authentic Polish food cheaply. One student, majoring in political science, becomes visibly uncomfortable. She asks if eating here supports communism. The guide, a historian who moonlights as a tour operator, carefully explains that Poland transitioned to democracy and capitalism over 3 decades ago, and milk bars are simply traditional restaurants now, like diners in America. She's unconvinced, asking why they'd keep communist infrastructure if communism was bad. Her friend suggests maybe it's like Americans keeping things from problematic historical periods. She rejects this comparison, insisting American history is different because we're the good guys. The guide attempts to explain the nuanced relationship Poles have with their complicated history, acknowledging hardship while preserving cultural memory. Both students look increasingly confused. One asks if Polish people are okay with having been communist. The guide explains that current Poles didn't choose communism. It was imposed by geopolitical circumstances following World War II. This leads to a 15-minute tangent where the students try to understand why Poland didn't just vote communism. Out in the 1950s, the guide considers career changes. They finish the tours, but refuse to eat at the milk bar, getting McDonald's instead, posting Instagram stories about how they avoided propaganda food. The guide shares the story with other tour guides over drinks. It becomes that week's favorite tale. In Reykjavik, Iceland, a businessman from Chicago attends a conference. Between sessions, he visits a public swimming pool, famous for Icelandic culture. He's handed a laminated sheet explaining the mandatory naked shower requirement before entering the pool. He reads it, laughs, and attempts to enter the pool area in his swim trunks without showering. An attendant, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who's worked there 40 years, stops him. She points to the showers, explaining the rule clearly. He refuses, calling it a violation of privacy. She explains that Icelandic pools use minimal chlorine to protect the environment. So pre-swim showering removes oils and bacteria, making the system work. He dismisses this as pseudoscience, insisting chlorine solves everything, and this rule exists because Scandinavians are obsessed with conformity. She corrects him that Iceland isn't technically Scandinavian. He waves this off, announcing he knows his rights as a paying customer. She calmly explains he's welcome to shower and swim, or leave and get a refund. He chooses a third option, standing in the entrance, blocking other patrons, loudly lecturing about American exceptionalism and how U.S. pools don't have authoritarian shower mandates. Security arrives. He threatens to contact the American embassy over forced public nudity. Security escorts him out while he shouts about international law. He spends the evening composing a detailed complaint to Icelandic tourism authorities about human rights violations. The pool attendant returns to her station, having seen versions of this scenario at least monthly for 4 decades. She tells her colleague they should start a betting pool on which nationality argues the longest. Americans currently hold the record. The pattern holds. From Bucharest to Bergen, from Lisbon to Riga, a particular brand of confidence meets systems designed with completely different foundational logic, and fireworks ensue. These aren't people refusing to adapt. They're people unable to process that their way isn't the universal default, that other systems aren't broken versions of American ones, but rather solutions too. Different problems with different histories. If you want to understand the next cultural meltdown before it even happens, stay ahead of it here. I'll keep decoding these global logic collisions. And the people who subscribe are the ones who stop being surprised by the world. Next time, Americans discover that Europe has different cheese regulations, leading to economic theories that would make actual economists weep.